Hello my friends and welcome back to another video! So we are well into 2025 and I wanted to share with you guys the 25 books that I am hoping to read in 2025. Because there are some really excited reads that I want to get to this year. And also stay till the end to hear about the new releases that I'm also very excited to read. So some of these books I own already, and some of these books I'll either have to thrift or get from the library when it comes to reading them. So I'm just gonna dive into the books that I own first, and then we're gonna switch over to the books that I do not own, but I still want to read. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. If you're new here, I'm Cabrini Sense. I am hoping to be an author, but I also love to read. So this is my channel where I do both. If you haven't already seen the books that I read in 2024, I posted that video last week. And if you wanted to see the reviews that I gave, you should check that video out. It'll be on one of these sides. So without further ado, let's look at the books that I'm hoping to read in 2025. So starting out really strong, I'm probably gonna look like a crazy person for picking this book, but I would like to read the Odyssey by Homer. This is a epic poem, Greek mythology classic, technically you could call it like historical literature. But this book I read in high school when I was a freshman and I really enjoyed it. And there's a musical out called Epic the Musical that is based off of this story. And ever since becoming obsessed with that musical, I've wanted to reread this book. And so why not reread it this year? Essentially we're following Odysseus. If you don't know the plot of this book, we're following Odysseus as he has just finished the Trojan War, and he is traveling back to his home country, Ithaca, where he is hoping to arrive to see his wife and his son, because he was in battle for a long time, and then they have this long journey to return home, and it takes him like 20 years. And there are so many ups and downs, and there's the question of will he actually make it? Yes, I'm very excited to read this book again. I'm probably going to rely heavily on the audiobook because the language of it definitely feels like very translated. I mean, very old-timey, but I'm excited to read it. Taking a little bit of a shift into like some more realistic modern day books. I am hoping to read a lot of classics this year. I have a whole bookshelf of classics and I have not read very many of them. So that is partially why I wanted to read the Odyssey, just to get myself into like the world of classics. And you'll see that there are a couple other classics that I'm hoping to read. But the next book that I'm hoping to read is A Man Called Ove by Friedrich Bachmann. He's written a couple of pretty popular books. He's also written Anxious People, and I have been hoping to also read that one. But this book I think is just about an old man. You're following this old man named Ove. He's kind of like the grumpy old man of the neighborhood, and for one reason or another, some people in the neighborhood come to visit him and they ask him about his life story, and he kind of like walks them through it. At least as far as I understand, that's how it goes. But I'm excited to read this book. I thrifted it and I've been waiting for a reason to read it. I've heard a lot of really good things about this author, Friedrich Bachmann, so I'm excited to read one of his books, and I think that this would be a really good one. I do think that they made it into a movie. I think it's A Man Called Ove is the movie. I think Tom Hanks stars in it. So I'm excited to read this. The next book on the train of classics is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I love the movie. I love the movie with Keira Knightley. The longer one is not as much of my favorite, but I love the story. I love Mr. Darcy. I love Elizabeth Bennet. And I've just always wanted to actually read the book. So I'm hoping to pick this up this year. I know that Jane Austen has a lot of books and I would like to read them. Things like Sense and Sensibilities, Emma, Persuasion, her other books I would like to get to, but I think that just starting with Pride and Prejudice, especially to like get into her writing, again, because it is a little bit more Old English, I think that this would be a good one to start with because I already know the story and it'll just be like understanding the writing. And I'm interested to see like how different the movie is from the book. If you don't know, this is about, it's like old time France. We have Elizabeth Bennet as our main character. She is the second oldest of 5 sisters. and her mother is trying to marry them all off. And so we have her older sister and her love story that we're kind of following, and then there is Mr. Darcy, who has a terrible first impression with Elizabeth, and she decides to despise him. But you kind of see the enemies to lovers trope in this book, and it's kind of cool because this is probably one of the first books that really has that trope in it. So very excited to read this. I'm a little bit hesitant just because I have seen the movie so many times. I'm afraid I'm gonna get bored because I know where it's going, but I'm also like intrigued. So I don't know, we'll see how it goes. The next book I'm hoping to read, I am very excited about. I've seen a lot of people give really great reviews, but I've also heard it's one of the saddest books ever. And that book is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Kristen Hanna is a historical fiction writer, and if you're new here, I love historical fiction. It's probably my favorite genre. I have been it's been very recent that I've been willing to admit that. I'm very excited to read this book. I believe it's about two sisters in World War II, and I think that they're living in Paris, especially because the Eiffel Tower is on it. I've heard that it's really, really sad. I've heard that you're just kind of following their journey. I don't know if they're protecting Nazis or if that is involved in it at all. I wouldn't be surprised, again, because it's World War II. But I've heard this is like the most heartbreaking story ever, and I think it's either this book or Fireflies that they're about to make into a movie. Yeah, I think this one is about to be a movie. So I definitely want to read it before the movie comes out, and I've just seen so much hype about it, and I'm like, hey, I'm a historical fiction girly, like, I have to read her books. So I'm hoping to read a lot of Kristen Hanna this year. I have 3 other of her books. I have this one, and then I have Firefly Lane, The Great Alone, and True Colors by her. But I've also heard that Fourth Winds is really good. I've also heard The Woman is her newest book that she came out with. I haven't seen anyone read that one yet, but I am also intrigued to read that one. So yes, very excited to dive into the Kristen Hanna world. This is probably one of my most anticipated reads for this year. I'm a little bit nervous that I'm not going to like it because I am super excited about her as an author, and so if I don't love it, I don't know. But definitely going to be reading this book and hopefully more of her books this year. The next book that I am picking up is The Inheritance Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I don't know much about this book. I think it is, there's a man from a large family who's very wealthy that dies, and then he offers his inheritance to some random girl, and in order for her to inherit the inheritance, she has to basically play this game. I think it's going to be really good. I've heard really good things about it. This is a series. I think there are 2 more books. Yeah, 2 more books after this, and then she is writing like a spin-off series, I think, also with these characters. So I'm very intrigued to like enter this world. I think it could be really fun. I think that this book technically falls into fantasy, but I could definitely see it taking a thrilling turn. The next book I'm excited to read is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr? I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but this is a historical fiction. I really enjoyed The Book Thief, and I've heard that this book is kind of similar to it, so I've been dying to pick this book up. I thrifted it a couple months ago, and I'm so excited to read it. I believe we're following our female main character and her father, also in World War II, and they have to flee Paris, and they hide out in a town, and in this town she meets a boy, and I think there's a romance subplot maybe to this book, but I've heard that it is really, really good, and I'm super intrigued to read it. And again, historical fiction, how could I pass it up? So very excited about this one. And then the next book I'm hoping to read is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This will be my second Emily Henry book. In 2024, I did read Beach Read, and I absolutely loved it. Rated it 5 stars. I cried at the end. It was so good. I've heard very mixed reviews on this book. Some people love it and some people hate it. So I'm like very intrigued to see where I fall kind of on that scale. My understanding, it's about a woman who works as a publisher, librarian, literary agent, and her sister begs her to go on a vacation with her, so she goes on this vacation with her. And while she's on vacation, she runs into an editor that she happens to work with quite often. And yeah, it sounds like every single time that they like run into each other, it's never a good situation. So yeah, and then I'm assuming romance happens between them. I am very intrigued. I feel like, I mean, like, they're literally reading books on the cover, so I feel like it's gonna give like good bookish vibes, which most of my favorite books involve, like writing bookish things like that. So I'm very hopeful for this book, and obviously Emily Henry is wonderful and her writing is super good, so I think that will help. The next book I'm hoping to read in 2025 is Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. So I think that there is a man who is a murderer, but you're following the woman that loves him, I think. I really don't know like anything about this book. So my sister-in-law owns it and she is lending it to me, so I'll probably read this book sooner rather than later. But I'm really intrigued by it. A lot of people that I know have read it, have really enjoyed it, and like it has a really big following, so I'm hoping that I like it. The like more thriller side of it does scare me a little bit, but yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes. So that is all of the physical copies of the books that I have for the books that I'm hoping to read in 2025. So now I'm going to read off the books that I do not own, but I'm still hoping to read in 2025. And the first book is Assistant to the Villain. This book I think is a fantasy. I don't know very much about it, but I think that there's a villain who is being thwarted, and his assistant, you're following his assistant and like her role that she's playing in helping him win. I'm a little bit torn about this book because I hate when you root for the villain, or it's not my favorite, but there are some exceptions. I think that there's a little bit of a romance that sparks between the assistant and the villain. I've heard that there's a frog like side character that is hilarious, so I'm super intrigued about that. This book I think definitely blew up in 2024, so I'm hoping that it'll be a good time, because I think that everyone that I've seen that read it really enjoyed it, so that's good. Assistant to the Villain is by Hannah Nicole Mayer. I think it's Mayer. The next book I'm excited to read in 2025 is Today, Tonight, Tomorrow by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This book, you're following two academic rivals, and it's like their last day of school or something, or they're doing some type of school competition at the end of the school year, but they have to work together for one reason or another. So it's academic rivals to lovers. It's spanned in one day. I think that like the title chapters are like the hours, like 11 a.m., 1 p.m., things like that. And I think that this book is technically a YA romance, but I've seen really good things about it and I really want to read it. So I'm intrigued by this book, and then the second one I think came out last year or the year before, and so I'm hoping to also read that one. I don't know why this book intrigues me so much. I don't know if it's the color of the book or what, but I am very excited about this book. The next book that I'm intrigued to read is The Library of Borrowed Hearts by Lucy Gilmore. Yeah, I don't really know much about this book. I think that someone is working as a librarian and she finds love notes in books, and so she like follows and like unravels the secret romance, which sounds super intriguing. Like I love the idea of that. There's a movie on Netflix called The Last Letter to Your Lover, which has like a similar plot kind of, and just like writing in the margin I think is like a really cute like love story idea. So very intrigued about that. The next book that I'm hoping to read is The Storied Life of A.J. Fikry by Gabrielle Zevin. She's the author of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, another book that I'm hoping to get to eventually. And I think it's about an old man, or a man that's kind of estranged, and his book collection goes missing, and then he receives an unexpected package that changes the course of his life. So it seems intriguing. I think I've heard good things about this book. There's a plot there's a subplot, I think, or there's something that happens in this book that intrigues me, but I don't actually know if it's this book or another book. But regardless, I'm excited to read this book. The next book I'm hoping to read in 2025 is I Pledge My Loyalty by A. Quinn. I think that this is a pirate romantasy. The main reason that I'm hoping to read this book is because one of my good friend, her boyfriend, is like childhood friends with the author of this book. I think she's about my age, and she's published 2 books so far. I think she self-published them through Amazon, but her 3rd book I think is coming out in 2025. So I'm really intrigued to pick this book up. I don't know if you can really get it anywhere other than off of Amazon, so I'm probably gonna have to buy it myself. But she's a small author that I'm really excited to support, and I'm really intrigued by her book, especially after reading Powerless. I feel like it's gonna give kind of similar vibes, but also be like its own thing. And it's just like really exciting for her that she's self-publishing her books, like kind of what I want to do. So I'm really intrigued to read her books. The next book I'm hoping to read is Lovely War by Julie Berry. This book I think is technically historical fiction. I think that there is an element of like Greek gods in it. It's during both World War I and World War II, I think. Which, when you think about like Greek gods, I feel like you don't think about like the World War I, World War II era. So I'm really intrigued to see like how that happens. And I think if I am reading the Odyssey and then reading Lovely War like around the same time, I feel like the theme of Greek gods is very present. So I'm really intrigued to see how they do that and how the plot unfolds for that book. Alrighty, my battery is dying, so I had to change it. My battery always dies when I sit down to film these videos because I always start with like 20%. I need to just put in a fresh battery when I start filming these videos. I feel like I'm off-centered now. The next book that I am excited to read is Ready or Not by Caraval. This is a unexpected pregnancy trope, and I believe you're just kind of following her through the pregnancy. I think it's really like super like day to day, and like go to her appointments and stuff like that. And yeah, I think that I'm just really intrigued by it. I saw Rachel Catherine read it and she really enjoyed it, so that intrigues me, and I think it would just be a fun read. And then in the same vein of unexpected pregnancy, the next book I'm excited to read is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. This book blew up. It's also an unexpected pregnancy, except I think that hers is a little bit more on like self-identity. It sounds like she lives like a very like stable life, and then she finds out about the baby, and you kind of see her evaluate like, oh, if I'm having a baby, can I stay in this apartment? Is this a career that I really want to have if I'm having kids? And I think that there's still very much a romance between her and the father of her child. So I'm very intrigued about that. I'm very excited for those 2 books. Unexpected like pregnancy in books just like intrigues me so much, so I'm super excited to read those 2. The next book I'm hoping to read in 2025 is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This book I think is a fantasy. You have 2 people, I don't know if they're opposing or what, but they realize that if they write a letter and they slide it under a certain door, then the other person finds it. That's kind of all that I know about it. So I don't know like if there's politics in it, or I don't know what like the other main conflicts are of this book, and I'm really just excited to go into it blind. I've heard a lot of people like really love it, so I'm definitely excited to read this. And then I know Ruthless Vows, the next book in the series, is out already, so I'll probably pick that one up too. I'm very much like a let's continue the series type of person. I'm assuming there's romance. I'm assuming there's like more to the story than just that, because a ton of people love this book. And I really wanted to read in 2024. I even got it from the library, but life just got crazy and I did not read it in time, so I had to return it. But that's okay. So now I'm gonna read it in 2025. Next up we have Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. This book is set in both San Francisco and New York. I think it's childhood lovers reconnect for one reason or another. I don't really know anything about this. I've never read anything by Christina Lauren. I just know a lot of people love this book, and I feel like it would be a good first book to read by her. So yeah, I really don't have any other words for it. Oh, that was so great. The next book I am hoping to read is Flowerheart by Catherine Bakewell. This is a young adult fantasy. It sounds like this girl has powers that have never been an issue until one day she accidentally harms her father. And then she has to cast this really difficult spell to save him. And I think that you're following the journey of her learning how to, and there's a price that she has to give to her friend who's going to help her in return. So very interesting, very intrigued. I think I watched, again, Catherine Rachel read this book. I haven't heard very much about it, but it very much intrigues me, so I'm excited to read it. The next book we have is Happiness for Beginners by Catherine Center. I read 2 Catherine Center books last year. I absolutely loved her. I want to continue to read her books that she's coming out with. I know that this book is about hiking. I think that you have a woman who recently got out of a divorce, so she's going on a hiking trip, and then her brother's best friend, her younger brother's best friend, is also on the hiking trip, and you just kind of follow their trip, and I think something goes terribly wrong, and you kind of see them fall in love. So I know it's a movie on Netflix. People have said the movie's terrible. I almost watched the movie months and months ago, but I didn't for whatever reason, and I'm kind of glad that I didn't, because I feel like I would have ruined the book if I had watched it. But I might watch the movie after I read the book. The next book I am hoping to read in 2025 is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. Really what I want to read is Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, but I've heard that the Caraval series is before, and some people say you have to read it, some people say you don't, but I was like, I could just start the first book of the Caraval books and see if I like it, and if I don't, oh well, then maybe I would skip on to Once Upon a Broken Heart or not. I don't know. I'm intrigued by it, so I was like, might as well give Caraval a shot, and if I like it, yay. Because I don't want to read Once Upon a Broken Heart and be like, oh man, I wish I read Caraval first. So I was like, might as well start with it. And I literally know nothing about this book. I think you're following 2 sisters and they end up in this game of Caraval, or it's like a performance. It sounds very like circusy, so that's kind of what I think it is. And I think that the one sister has to win or perform or engage in some type of arrangement in order to free her sister. But I'm not positive, so I guess I'll read it and figure it out. Oh my goodness, guys. The next book I'm hoping to read is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. Last year I read The Dead Romantics by her, and I loved it a lot, actually. So I have heard that The 7-Year Slip is amazing, and I really want to read it. And then I've heard a novel love story by her isn't as amazing, but I'm still probably going to read that one too. Excuse me. I just really like Ashley Poston. She writes magical realism, which I think is really fun. It's just a fun genre. So this book, I think there's a girl who moves into an apartment, and one day she is hanging out, or she comes home and she finds a man there, and he is from 7 years earlier. He's from the past, and so you kind of figure out like, who is he, and like, how is he stuck, and like, I don't know, it's this whole thing. So I'm really intrigued by it, and I'm really excited to read it because I've seen such good reviews about it. The next book I'm hoping to read in 2025 is 8 Cousins by Louisa May Alcott. I read 2 of Louisa May Alcott's books last year. She is the author of Little Women, which is my favorite book of all time. And 8 Cousins is one of her series that I don't believe is connected to Little Women. It might be, I'm not positive. But I think that you are following Rose, who is recently orphaned, and then she moves in with her aunt and uncle, and they have 8 boys, or 8 children, and you just kind of see her adjust to life in a big family and stuff like that. So I'm really intrigued to read it. I know that it's the first in a series, so I think there are either 2 or 3 books after, but I'm really intrigued to read it. And then the last book on my list of books I want to read in 2025 is The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is a fantasy. I've heard so many people go in with the mindset it's a fantasy. There's like a teeny tiny like sprinkle of romance, but it is a fantasy. So I'm mentally prepared for that. Yeah, I really don't know much about what happens. So it sounds like when our female main character was young, her parents died, and her 2 sisters got kidnapped by the fairies, and she wants to leave, or she wants, I really don't know, guys. Like, I just read the summary and it still confuses me. So it might just have to be like an in the moment, but I know that there's fairies and humans mixing and it's gonna be a good time. So fantasy with a sprinkling of romance. I just gotta remember that part. So yeah, that is all of the books that I'm hoping to read in 2025. And I just wanted to point out some honorable mentions of some new releases that are coming out this year that I'm super excited to read. The first one comes out on April 8th, and that is Fearless by Lauren Roberts. This is the third book in the Powerless series. I read the first 2 books last year. I am obsessed. I love the world. I love the characters. I'm so excited to see how this like story all ties up. And yeah, we have some crazy things that need to be put together and like settled. So I'm super excited for this book to come out. On April 22nd, Emily Henry is releasing her new book, which is Great Big Beautiful Life. And I think this one we're following 2 authors who are battling to write the story of an heiress, a princess, some like historical figure maybe. And you just see they're battling with each other. So yeah, super excited about that. Super excited for Emily Henry's new book. The next book is The Love Haters by Catherine Center, and this book is about 2 people that hate love, and that's about all that I got from it. And this one comes out on May 20th, so I'm very excited about this one. We love a Catherine Center book. The next book that I am excited to come out in 2025 is Sounds Like Love by Ashley Poston. This comes out on June 17th, and I believe that we are following 2 musicians and their love story. So very intrigued by this, super excited. And so those are the 4 books that I'm excited to come out in, and all of the rest of the books that have already come out that I'm excited to read in 2025. So thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you haven't already, please give this video a thumbs up. It does so much good for my channel when you do that. If you have enjoyed my videos so far, or you're interested in following the journey of my writing and my reading, please subscribe. I love the little community that we have formed, and yeah, I want to bring you along with my writing journey and sharing with you my thoughts on these books that I'm excited to read. If you want to see a little bit more of me in the day-to-day, you can follow me over on Instagram at Videos by Cabrini. I just post my regular day-to-day life over there and the random things that I'm doing, so it's a fun time over there. And yeah, I will see you next Thursday for another video. Bye guys!